Hello and welcome back to my channel. Lately I've been kind of rediscovering my love for books and reading, so I had this idea to start a series here on my channel where I recap and summarize my favorite books. I thought I would call the series the Book Cap series because it's like book and recap, book cap, and without talking about anything else too much, I would like to start off with my first book, which is Success Habits by Napoleon Hill. This is for sure one of my favorite books. I have already read it like twice in the last months, and if you're interested in purchasing this book, I will leave a link in the description bar where you can buy it. So Napoleon Hill was a very successful self-help author, but there are two things that make his work very different to the other self-help books we find nowadays. The first thing is that he was actually born in 1883. His most famous book is Think and Grow Rich, and Success Habits isn't actually written by him. It's a transcription of radio programs he gave in 1952. The second thing has something to do with his story. If you're more interested in the details of his story, I will leave a link to his biography down below. But basically, at some point, he became very, very successful, and he had the opportunity to talk to and interview the most successful people in America at that time. Sadly, there isn't really a representation of women in this book, but basically all the things he says are mostly backed up with stories of literally the most successful inventors and just people in general at that time in America, which I think makes the book very different to other books I have read. It's honestly not only a book for people who want to become rich and successful, which you might think at first glance because of the title. It's seriously a book for all kinds of people, everyone who wants something in life, and I think we all do that, whether that be happiness or health, it doesn't really matter. Point number one is definiteness of purpose. He starts this chapter by saying, wherever you find anybody who is succeeding, you'll find a person who has adopted the principle of definiteness of purpose in connection with the things he does, and he follows that principle at all times. He basically means that when you want something, you know the details of your desire, I guess. So what, when, where, how, and why you want what you want. And then he backs it up with an example of himself. He had a written statement on paper for the coming year which said, I will earn during the year 1919 the sum of $100,000. Fast forward some time, he ends up getting a job offer from someone who would pay him $100,000 for 1 year of work. The catch is though, the guy wouldn't pay him monthly. He said he would give him all of the money at the end of that year. Of course, he accepts, but then in the end, the guy rips him off and he doesn't get paid any money. And he said the reason for that was that he wasn't definite or clear enough on what he wanted, because in his statement, he only wrote earn $100,000. But in the end, he reflects that he should have written earn and receive $100,000. And so when he would have had that clarity before, most likely he would have looked over the contract before signing it, making sure that he didn't only earn but also receive the money. And then there's also a comparison made regarding the importance of this when we look at everything else we see. Yes, and we see the definiteness of nature in the fixation of all of the stars and planets and their immovable relationship to one another. The astronomers can figure and foretell hundreds of years in advance the approximate relationship of any two given stars or planets at a given time. You couldn't do that if there wasn't a definite plan of operation being carried on by nature. And that kind of made me realize how important this is, because it's kind of everywhere. But then he also adds, which is where I think many people, including myself, get stuck sometimes, that yes, there has to be a purpose, but this purpose has to be backed up with a plan of action. You know, it's not enough to say someday I will start dancing. You have to say tomorrow I will go to my first dance lesson and I will continue going there every week for 1 year. So on to the next point, which is accurate thinking and how to be an accurate thinker. Accurate thinking and accurate thinkers permit no one to do their thinking for them. If you're going to be an accurate thinker in the strict sense of that term, you have got to get in the habit of becoming responsible for your own thinking and your own opinions and your own ideas. What he basically means with that is that you always use your own mind to look at the information in front of you before just taking that in, whether that be watching the news, reading a book, watching a movie. Any output from the outside should always first be filtered through our own mind, I guess. And the same goes for what other people think of us, you know, the opinions they have on us and the advice they give us. You'll not be accepted the moment your head sticks up about above the crowd in any sort of undertaking. The gossipers will begin to take you apart, take you down to size if you let them do it. But if you're an accurate thinker, you'll pay no attention to what is said about you. When I first read that part, I was kind of like, no, we should always listen to the input other people have about us. But then I realized he actually doesn't mean it in that way, because later on he also says it's all right to seek information from other people, get all the knowledge you can, get all the facts you can, but in the final analysis, don't let anybody make up your mind for you about anything. My next favorite part of the book is where he talks about how to deal with failure in life. And he talks about this example where he met Mr. Edison, who is one of the biggest inventors of all time because he invented the first incandescent electric light. And Mr. Edison shares with him that before he managed to solve his invention, he actually failed approximately 10,000 times. So it's for sure about getting in the habit of bringing up more willpower when the going is hard rather than just quitting in that moment. But then he also says it's about realizing that every failure has the seed of an equivalent benefit. But he says, you don't get the ripened fruit of that benefit, you just get the seed. But to be able to make use of that seed, you can't stay focused on the negative of that situation. You have to recognize that there is a seed there. He continues to talk in detail about the 15 major causes of failure, and I have picked out the 3 that stuck out to me the most. Number 1 is too much curiosity in other people's business, because we only have a limited amount of things we can focus on in one day, and using that to focus on things other people are doing that are not affecting us and shouldn't concern us is honestly a waste of time. The next thing is inadequate schooling, and with that he doesn't mean education in the traditional sense. He's more talking about having a desire to get to know yourself and your mind and then educating yourself accordingly, for example by reading books, so that at some point you can reach that. And then number 3, the last point, is having a negative mental attitude, and he continues to compare the human mind to a river, and I love this part of the book so much, so I would like to read it. Do you know there's a great river flowing in life? It's a strange river. Most people have never seen it, yet it affects their lives. Most people have been in one side or the other of it. The strangeness of this river consists in the fact that one half of it flows in one direction, and all who get into that side of it are carried to success inevitably, regardless of what they do. The other half flows in the opposite direction, and all who get in that side just as inevitably are carried down to failure, no matter how much education they have and no matter how much effort they may put into their lives. You may not recognize it, ladies and gentlemen, but you're in that river on one side or the other right this very moment. You're either in the negative side or you're in the positive side, one or the other, sure as you live. I will now leave it at that, as I've come to the end of this first video that I wanted to make for the series. And yeah, I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, make sure to give it a thumbs up, check out some other videos of mine and subscribe. Thank you very much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed.